It's June again, everyone, which of course means it's Pride Month, and to help celebrate, DC has revealed the much-awaited sequel to their Pride anthology from last year. Like before, this set of anthology stories seeks to celebrate all the great queer heroes and queer creators that make comics what they are. Now, because this is such a huge collection, I'm not going to be able to cover every story as in-depth as I usually do, but I am going to try and highlight some of my favorites. Now, much like in last year's Pride special, this book actually opens up with a foreword from a trailblazing queer person within the comic sphere. In this case, I'm talking about Nicole Mains, the trans activist and actress who helped bring Dreamer to life on the small screen as part of Supergirl. She also just so happened to write a Dreamer story for Pride 2021, which marked the moment wherein her character was officially canonized within the greater DC universe. Obviously, having a trans woman write the foreword makes a lot of sense when you stop and consider that trans rights are under attack pretty much all over the world and not just in America, as opportunistic politicians go out of their way to take away the most basic human rights and protections for all of our trans friends. Obviously, go read it yourself if you check out the book. I promise it's worth it. Now, the first big story in this collection actually deals with Jon Kent, the Superboy, who has essentially become the poster boy for queer DC Comics. After his own big coming out as bisexual story earlier this year in the Tom Taylor run, it's also something of a Super Sons reunion piece as Jon goes out of his way to help Damian deal with a group of mercs, so Damian can be freed up to join Jon at his very first Pride Parade. Damian is of course played as the eternal stick in the mud, the only person who's able to not have fun at a parade, but he also shocks Jon and Jay with his knowledge of queer history, when he invokes how the basis of Pride was born out of the Stonewall riots. Jon and Jay assure Damian that it's not a riot anymore, it's a party, it's a celebration, and that he should try and enjoy himself, which he mostly does by pointing out all the security issues with the event itself. The funny part is, this is actually him being supportive of his friend Jon. Speaking of the new young Superman, he's actually going to be playing a much bigger part in the parade than even he thought. Jay has made him a brand new cape honoring all the different queer flags. Jon has a very nice little monologue about the power of symbols, something that the superhero community knows so well, how you can sum up a complicated idea in one image, one that bypasses the brain and goes directly to the heart. The Superman symbol, the House of L symbol, has meant so much to so many different people for so long, and now Jon hopes that he can stitch his own part in this great tapestry. And yeah, that's basically the story, short, sweet, and to the point. Now, the next story actually focuses on Queen Nubia of the Amazons. She's talking with her lover about the day they first met. Apparently, it all started with a sword that was broken in battle, only Nubia's not been telling the whole truth to her lover this whole time. We get treated to a flashback complete with period-specific art where we discover that Nubia had actually teamed up with Big Barda of the Female Furies to get involved in a charity women's wrestling match against Giganta. The wrestling company itself is also a reference to old Mr. Miracle stories and a very direct parody of WoW Women's of Wrestling, in case you were wondering. Nubia and Big Barda had won the match, which in turn ticked off Giganta and led to her growing to a massive size and breaking her sword. Nubia was always embarrassed about telling the truth to her blacksmith lover, but now that things have gone on so long in their relationship, they're finally able to be free and open with each other. I like this story because it showcases that not every story about queer heroes in comics needs to be about them overcoming hardship. In this case, it's just two old lovers enjoying each other's company. After all, isn't queer joy just as important to show on the page as it is queer hardship? Now, it's the third story in this collection that I was the most excited about when it got announced, because it's focusing on the newly returned Connor Hawke, son of Green Arrow. We see Connor is writing a letter to his estranged mother, trying to open up to her about the fact that he is asexual but not aromantic. For those wondering, what that basically means is Connor loves the idea of love and being loved and being in a relationship. He just doesn't really enjoy the whole physical, sexual part of it. Connor has really had a hard time coming to terms with this, what with the fact that his father, Oliver Queen, is the legendary ladies' man that he is. This story is also special too because it sees Connor Hawke stop a robbery pulled off by none other than the Music Meister. Yes, that's right, the first canon appearance of the fan-favorite Brave and the Bold villain right here, right now. It also makes perfect sense too to have this character in the Pride collection when we stop and remember that Music Meister was voiced by and modeled on Neil Patrick Harris, another famously out gay man. Hell, Damian even shows up at the end of this story too, and we find out that after defeating Music Meister, Connor Hawke discovered that he was working for the Devil Nisa. Yes, apparently this story will continue not only in the pages of Robin, but also in that big Robin vs. Batman crossover event coming September. Now, the next story actually features the big return of Alysia Yeoh. Chances are you probably don't remember her, but she was actually Barbara Gordon's roommate during the New 52 Batgirl stories. Before Simone got taken off the book and Alicia more or less disappeared, it was revealed that she was a trans woman. And while she may have fallen off the face of the earth in the main universe, over in the DC Bombshells imprint from Marguerite Bennett, the character came back in a big way and actually became a hero too. As we join Alicia, she's actually just leaving a big trans conference in Gotham City, and slowly but surely she's starting to lose faith in all the progress her and her people have made. It's right around this time too, Alicia ends up coming face to face with an injured Batgirl. Apparently she got incredibly hurt in a battle with Killer Moth, and now she's the only one who can help her. Barbara remembers that she had a good head on her shoulders back when they used to live together, but she's still very sure to guard her secret identity from this woman. I always really liked Alicia in those Gail Simone stories because I thought she served as a nice little reflection for Barbara. Here's a woman who was a community activist looking for a completely different way to fight crime and criminality via grassroots means. As it turns out, Killer Moth not only shot Barbara with some of his brand new fancy tech, but he also put a tracker inside her too, meaning that he's able to chase her back to the Belfry. With Barbara still too hurt to fight, Alyssa takes it upon herself to grab one of the leftover Batgirl costumes and arm herself with her own bat. Again, for those who don't know, a bat was her signature weapon over in those Bombshell stories, and this new origin for her is kind of splitting the difference. She even thinks about calling herself Batgirl with a hyphen, which I think is very fun. Alicia manages to power on through and defeat Killer Moth, and doing so helping her get out of her own existential funk now that she knows there really is another way to help Gotham City and make a difference. Also, hey, if you're as won over by this character as I am, don't worry, you'll get to see her again sooner rather than later because she's going to be in that HBO Max Batgirl movie fairly soon. And they even cast a trans actress in the role too. From there, we get a short story with Calderam Aquaman. He's going on a date with a guy from Zabel. He meets his family and then takes him to his crappy New Mexico town. This one's a lot more superhero and a lot less slice of life, but I'm sure a lot of people are going to enjoy it. After that, we get a Joe Far Sector Green Lantern story with an amazing black and white film noir art style, wherein the only color is the green of the Green Lantern ring. Seriously, this looks so good. Why is there not a whole Far Sector book like this right now I can go read? Joe takes a classic detective movie job to go follow a spouse who might be cheating on their other alien spouse, but it turns out to actually be a trap by two carnivorous alien serial killers who are targeting Joe not only because she has a Green Lantern filled with great will, but because she's a bisexual woman too. I would definitely say this was the coolest one of the collection. The Ray and the Justice League of America get a story too. Of course, the Ray is one of the foremost elder statesmen of queer characters in the DC universe, and this story actually focuses on more of his own fear of intimacy. He actually pushes his boyfriend away at work because he doesn't want the other heroes to see. Even though they already know he's gay and they already support him, he's just a guy who wasn't shown a lot of love and affection when he was younger, and because of that, he doesn't quite know how to process it all. Again, I think this is a very relatable story for all different sorts of people, not just queer people. Batwoman gets a story too, and it makes sense as Kate Kane is still probably one of the most prominent gay characters in all of comics, not just DC. She also was the cover girl for last year's Pride issue. And to their credit, they really go out of their way to not repeat themselves, mainly because this story isn't told through the perspective of Kate Kane. Instead, it's told through the perspective of her father. Jacob talks a lot about being a parent and raising Kate, and part of being a dad is about trying to give your kids everything you didn't have growing up and wanting to try and make them stronger, better versions of yourself. But how it was much too late before Jacob eventually realized that maybe the point of having kids isn't about making them stronger, maybe they make you stronger too. Lord knows he feels stronger for knowing Kate and everything she's been through. This is definitely probably the most feel-good of the story in the collection, and I really appreciate the change in perspective. Tim Drake gets a story in this collection too. I know Tim coming out as bi is still kind of a controversial topic amongst the fan base. Personally, I have no problem with it. I don't think it changes anything about Tim. Though I will freely admit I think DC kind of dropped the ball on how they chose to tell that story. Mainly, they didn't even give Tim a whole new book to deal with these brand new burgeoning feelings. Instead, they stuck it into another anthology. This story mainly involves Tim trying to get a gift to the guy he's currently seeing, but he keeps getting stopped up by supervillains at every turn. More than anything, it's a story about how hard it is to date when you're a superhero, and especially how hard it is to date when you're part of the Bat family and secrets just kind of come part and parcel of the deal. Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy get a story in this collection too, and why shouldn't they? They're basically the most prominent queer couple in DC Comics, I'd argue. Theirs is actually a sultry piece loaded with innuendo that also sees them overcome an evil mimic who's trying to drive them apart by bringing their worst feelings to the surface. Again, solid little story, can't wait for Harley Quinn Season 3. We get a whole story on Earth 11, which is of course the gender-swapped universe and home to Jess Chambers, aka the gender non-binary Kid Quick. Kid Quick and Teen Justice are also getting a whole miniseries this year as part of Pride all to themselves, courtesy of friend of the channel, Danny Lore, and I can't wait to tackle that too. This story even ends with a little stinger implying that we might be seeing the male version of Raven from this universe sooner than later. Now, the final story for this DC Pride collection is probably the biggest and most touted story in the lead-up. It's called Finding Batman, and it's written by Kevin Conroy, the voice actor that, well, was the voice of Batman for my entire generation and still is in my mind when I read the comics. Kevin Conroy had actually come out as a gay man in a 2016 interview, and I don't think a lot of people ended up reading that. I pride myself on having good gaydar, and even I didn't know until this book started getting promoted. This story is a heartrending personal account of Conroy's life growing up as a gay closeted man in the 50s and 60s, his parents' divorce, his father's suicide attempt, and his brother's long battle against schizophrenia. Basically, the idea being that perhaps Conroy did such a good job inhabiting a tragic character like Batman because he had so much of his own personal tragedy to draw upon. Even after Kevin left home and started actually getting work in the theater, his life didn't get any easier either, as it was around the same time the AIDS epidemic started. Kevin tearfully accounts losing good friends, even his manager, around that time, while also sharing some equally dark and dour stories about all the times that he had doors closed in his face in Hollywood because even the rumor of him being a gay man was around. Of course, we all know how the story ends though, right? Kevin Conroy gets that very fateful voiceover audition to play Batman, and when they ask him, can he become a guy who lives two separate lives? A man who is forced by the world and circumstance to wear a mask to hide his true self? Well, obviously Kevin could do that. He'd been doing it most of his life, sadly. But in owning that part of himself and truly taking it by the reins, not only was he able to take control of his own life, but also give us a Batman that stood the test of time. And so there you have it, everyone. DC Pride 2022 issue number 1. Another really solid collection of stories from some of the best and brightest in the world of comic books today. I love how diverse and nuanced all the stories are. You got your superhero action, you got your slice of lives, your comedies, and your very personal historical accounts. DC, to their credit, have actually done a really good job setting the bar super high with their collection of stories last year, and I'm glad to say this one actually meets those expectations and in some cases even surpasses them. Overall, I thoroughly enjoyed my time with this collection, and it's really nice to see that this is becoming a yearly thing at DC Comics. In fact, it's growing with a bunch of new spin-off series too. I'd give this one a very well-deserved 9 out of 10, and before I go, I'm going to wish you all a very happy Pride.
Hey there everyone, it's your old pal Cape Jewel, and if you're seeing me right now, that means you watched to the end of the video, which I am very appreciative of. It really helps drive engagement and retention and all that other good YouTube stuff. So does liking and commenting. Wink wink. If you like my content too, you should check out my Patreon page. We just redid all the tiers, so there's a ton of great rewards. You can become a patron for as little as $1 a month, and well, it would just really help me out. It's never expected, but always appreciated. So until next time everyone, I've been Cape Joel, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.